Our underreported stories segment tonight. 7 news stories the mainstream media neglected to tell you this week. Funny how that happens. The mainstream media gets so obsessed with questioning whether First Lady Melania Trump's white pantsuit means she hates her husband that they allow important stories to hit the newsroom cutting floor in favor of pushing salacious or silly stories that simply illustrate how much they detest our president. Hashtag journalism at its finest. However, we on Tipping Point actually respect you, and we think you'll want to hear about the things this week that the mainstream media ignored, things that really matter. 3 DACA recipients arrested for human smuggling in San Diego. One of them admitted that he was tracking the activities of the Border Patrol agents in order to report to his cohorts their movements so that they could smuggle people across the border without agents detecting them. Now, not all dreamers are criminals. It's absurd to suggest that, and I don't know anybody who is. But it's equally absurd to pretend that there is no impact on our nation when we legalize mass groups of illegal immigrants. Yet the mainstream media won't even tell you about any of the negative impacts. Liberal filmmaker Michael Moore says that we should cleanse our American soul of white privilege. Let me repeat. Michael Moore is advocating for liberals to cleanse our country of white privilege. The only thing more shocking than his authoritarian eugenicist hybrid vocabulary choices is the fact that he wants our government to do this. But did the mainstream media ask, how does he plan to do this? Isn't the only way to cleanse our country of so-called white privilege to discriminate against white people based on the color of their skin? And isn't that racism? Funny how the mainstream media didn't ask any of those questions. They just reported that the hashtag resistance was bravely boycotting President Trump's State of the Union address with their own so-called People's State of the Union. How incredibly biased of them. Outgoing Planned Parenthood CEO Cecile Richards says Christian doctors and nurses who are morally opposed to abortion should be forced to perform abortions anyway. She says it's discrimination against women seeking abortions if Christians are allowed to practice their religious beliefs. No mention of our Constitution, no mention of our First Amendment right to freedom of speech or freedom of religion, or how horrifying it is to think of our government forcing our citizens to do certain things that violate our religion, or how far this could go. Makes you wonder why the mainstream media failed to report this story at all. Liberals on Twitter celebrated when a train carrying congressional Republicans crashed and killed a truck driver. Author Stephen King said it was karma, and other progressive miscreants said, well, it was only a matter of time before the GOP killed them anyway. Remember back in 2016 when the mainstream media was constantly harping on what they called hateful rhetoric inciting violence coming from Trump? Well, it wasn't that. But this rhetoric coming from the left, what exactly does the mainstream media think this is if it's not violent rhetoric? Well, we'll never know because the mainstream media doesn't care enough to report it to you. Hillary Clinton refused to fire an official on her 2008 presidential campaign team after he was accused of sexual harassment. And make no mistake here, Hillary Clinton knew about the sexual misconduct. She says she believed the accuser, and yet she still refused to fire the perpetrator. Instead, she removed the victim, the woman, from the office the woman shared with the harasser and kept the harasser where he was. Did the mainstream media not notice the horrifying irony that Hillary Clinton, the so-called champion of women who said that all victims of sexual abuse should be believed, that she punished the victim of sexual abuse in her own workplace? The crowdfunding website Kickstarter banned a Swedish academic researcher for trying to raise money to publish a book studying the correlation between immigration and rape. They called her campaign hateful and offensive, even though the research was building on already existing data published by the Swedish government and the fact that the violent sexual crime rate in Sweden has skyrocketed since Sweden began allowing an influx of Muslim refugees into their country. Funny, you would think journalists in the mainstream media would care about a story like that, but they don't. A California lawmaker introduced a bill in the state assembly to ban plastic straws. The bill would make it a crime for waitresses to offer customers straws if the customers don't ask for the straws first. Funny how the mainstream media didn't notice the irony that California can make plastic straws illegal, but we can't make illegal immigrants illegal. The mainstream media doesn't care to report any of that to you, so we will. And coming up next, our next tipping point with Inez Felcher. The new jobs report is out, and it's looking pretty good. 200,000 jobs added in January, an unemployment rate of 4.1%. What does this mean for voters who otherwise maybe didn't like Trump? Stick with us. That's straight ahead.